Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Talking with the Southeastern Grassland Initiative. The executive director and the co-founder are both here via Zoom, and they're talking about restoring large areas of open grassland all across the Southeast. That is the way it used to be, and it would help with, I guess, endangered animals and all kinds of things. So that's what we're talking about. We had a caller who was on the line then left, but said, how would you plan on preventing invasive species from entering once you establish one of these open prairies? What's kind of the strategy there?
It's really, we have to do something we call an integrated management approach. So there's multiple different strategies that you have for a given site, and you never know what you're going to need to do. You see what happens. So if it's a prairie planting, we put a lot of effort in on the front end to prepare the site by eradicating the invasives that are there. We do use herbicides judiciously, but oftentimes that's an important management tool that we have to prepare a site. It gets planted with seed. This is, again, starting from scratch. And then it takes about 3 years for that to really going to go from, you have to control the weeds the first few years, perhaps by mowing the site repeatedly, to give those tiny little seedlings that are coming up a chance to compete with the weeds that are inherently on a given site. And then fire becomes a really important process. It was fire wasn't the only thing historically that helped to keep grasslands and keep them healthy, but it was a major factor. And it's one that we can use as a management tool. So we do use what we call prescribed fire, or intentional or controlled burns, whatever term you want to use, but we put fire into these at an appropriate time of year to check, for example, woody plants from encroaching in and keep it in that grass and herbaceous non-woody plant cover. So fire is important.
Fire was part of nature's plan.
You have to use herbicides.
Fire was part of nature's plan, but we've kind of eradicated fire, right? I mean, we don't have.
That's right.
There were large forest fires, or I guess they wouldn't be forest fires. There were large fires in Tennessee, but we don't see those now. Is that right, generally speaking?
That's right. So the landscape today is so fragmented, and of course we put fires out. We don't want fires burning down houses and pine plantations and other things that could be damaged by fire. But historically, fire was a major natural ecological process that influenced huge parts of the landscape. And it occurred as lightning set fires, and it occurred as human set burning, and prescribed burning by Native Americans gone back at least probably 12,000 years in the Southeast, perhaps longer, where fire was used regularly for a variety of purposes. But the landscape was very much managed with fire.
I have here the challenges facing southern grasslands, and you all are Southeastern Grassland Initiative, but this says southern grasslands, are complex. One of them is declining expertise. Universities are moving away from training new generations of field biologists, and there's a scarcity of skilled professionals. Is that right? What about the declining expertise?
Yeah, I think we'll both hit this a little bit. So, for the past 15 years, I've been proud to be a professor at Austin Peay State University, where in the late 1980s, several forward-looking individuals sort of saw this trend coming where a lot of universities were beginning to place more emphasis, at least in the sciences, particularly on the medical and molecular biology. And those are obviously of extreme importance, right? I mean, think about all we're going through in our society today. But many universities, and this is not just here in Tennessee, but this is nationwide, we're beginning to cut a lot of core classes in teaching people how to understand biodiversity. So, courses in how to identify fish and how to identify butterflies and birds, which are really integral to becoming a well-rounded naturalist and a biologist. Many universities were cutting whole departments that were teaching students those abilities. And so in 1986, several professors here at Austin Peay created the Center of Excellence for Field Biology, which really preserves this unique focus on training the next generations of biodiversity explorers, people who can be trained to understand biodiversity in our own backyard. So if we don't have those people operating across the Southeast and really across the nation, then we're sort of hamstrung by having people with the appropriate levels of knowledge who can say, go out and read those landscape forensic clues like we talked about, and then diagnose and prescribe what are the best practices to do in order to make that landscape healthy again. So it's really important that we think about this at a sort of a multifaceted scale, and addressing the training, of the next generation, or the lack of training in some regions, is a really important goal that needs to be carefully considered. Did
you want to add something, Theo?
Well, just to say that, Austin Peay really is the exception anymore to the rule. It is throughout our focal region, we have a hard time finding, especially young people that are, have field skills to do work for us or whatever. And it's a real problem. And, we do a lot of training. Dwayne has graduate students that seek us out specifically because here they can be exposed to that, to those kinds of opportunities, that kind of instruction at Austin Peay at the Center of Excellence for Field Biology.
It's fascinating to me. You said this started 5 years ago. You did Prairie preaching. You've kind of been building up, and now you're really beginning to make some headway. So, what was the very beginning of this? What was day one or day two like? How did that go? And I guess how did you begin to build this? What was like day one or day two like?
Well, I think Theo and I would be the first to acknowledge we never set out to create a new conservation organization with a team of probably approaching 25 now. Certainly didn't think in 2016 when we began this journey, and probably not in 2018 when we officially sort of declared launch, that we would be at this point today. For us, it really gets back to, I guess the simple version is, it gets back to both Theo and I seeing this collapse of biodiversity all around us, whether we're in Arkansas or Tennessee, hearing about the collapse from all of our friends in conservation, Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation staff, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service staff, National Park Service staff, all of us witnessing the same downward declines in biodiversity, and just sort of twiddling our thumbs thinking, man, what are we going to do about this? And so we had attended a conference in Starkville, Mississippi back in 2012 called the Southeastern Prairie Symposium, which really kind of invigorated us in thinking about, man, wow, how can we really build on this momentum? And so, a couple of years went by in 2013, 2014, and we were living life, and about 2016 comes along, and we realized the momentum really is not growing. And we looked at each other and we thought, man, if we don't carry this momentum forward, in 20 years, we'll be retired, and who's going to carry the torch? So we decided then to host a symposium at Austin Peay at the Center for Field Biology. And we brought in about 150 people from across the Mid-South region, representing 50 different organizations. And we called that the Mid-South Prairie Symposium. That was in May of 2016. And the last gentleman that registered for that event, Ben, was a philanthropist from New York City. And he came down and he listened to this 3-day event. And afterwards, he wrote to both of us and said, guys, our foundation is investing in savanna conservation in Kenya, over in Africa. And, we invest a lot of money over there. But what we're realizing in talking to you both is that we have our own American Serengeti right here that we're not investing in, and that is collapsing in front of our eyes and has been for 300 years. So they asked the question, they said, what role can private philanthropy play in your mission to restore southern grasslands? I tell this story completely sincerely. I had to go look up the word philanthropy to make sure that I was using it correctly. And finally, Theo and I both convinced ourselves these guys want to give us money to help figure this out. So from that, then they began to believe in us, mentor us. And since then, they've given us about $1.275 million to begin to help us to build core support for our organization, with the intent of growing other philanthropic contributions and bringing other partners on board to join us hand in hand to give grasslands an equal seat at the conservation table. And I say that because earlier you asked me about whether we want to compete with forests. We don't. What we want to do is give grasslands an equal seat along with forest and oceans and rivers and streams and wetlands, grasslands have to be part of the daily conversation of conservation.
Put it on the radar. Let's go to Wayne, who's on the phone here. Hello, Wayne. Wayne, are you there? Wayne?
Yes, how you doing?
Hi, what's on your mind?
Okay, I just want to ask 3 different questions. I hope they don't skip over them. If they can, answer them. First of all, you're talking about climate change, what he's summing it up to. And as long as the Republicans in office, I don't think that's going to happen with that, what he's talking about. They're going to block it at every turn. And second of all, he's getting about migration. Migration, as long as the population is spreading out, it kills a lot of the nature. And farming did also. And the most important reason, I think something happened, is the Civil War. The Civil War came about.
Did you say the Civil War? Okay.
And, yes.
Okay. All right, so
And the Civil War came about. It destroyed a lot of land. It destroyed, land, oil, and all this stuff. It destroyed a lot of nature. I want them to answer some of these questions, okay? Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we have to take a break. Then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about climate change, migration, and the Civil War. So we'll take a break. Be back right after this.
Awesome.